Okay, so this tutorial is for the benefit of people that don't actually have a copy of Sylenth. So I've got some base parts already exported out for you, and you can import them in using Simpler and the instrument rack inside of Ableton. So I'm just going to call this one Base Simpler. So we insert a new MIDI track, and then I'm going to go up to our instruments, and I'm going to bring in an instrument rack and drop it in there. And I'm going to grab a Simpler, and I'm just going to hit this Show Hide Chain List button here. And I'm going to either duplicate that or just drop in a second Simpler. So we've only got two bass notes here for this, and if we go to our samples folder and then go to our bass parts, we've got C1 and we've got C2. And we're going to use this, and as our bass pattern is across, let's have a look here, it's between A0 and A1. So we need to make sure all those notes are able to be hit. So if we go into our bass pattern, I'm going to grab C1 here. I'm going to drop it onto the first Simpler, and then C2, I'm going to drop that onto the second Simpler. So you can hear now whenever I audition this, it actually plays both of them at the same time. You can see there by the levels, they're both actually hitting at the same time. And so the C1 here, because this is C1 and everything works off of a C3 mechanism, so everything you import into here is relative to C3 on the keyboard. So whenever we bring this down to cover C1, it needs to be pitched. So long story short, you click on C1 and we need to go to the transpose section, and we need to hit plus 24 on this. And with C2, we need to do plus 12, as this is an octave below C3 and this one is 2 octaves below it. And then we need to hit the key button, and you can see here this is where it is actually panned across. So every note that you can see here, as long as this green bar is below it, this note will play on that actual note. So we don't want it to play like this. So we take the first one and we want to bring it back. So we're at C1 with this. So we can bring the extremities of that in, and we can do the same for this side. So that will only play on C1. But because we're playing at A0 on our notes on the MIDI track, we can extend this down so the A0 is covered. So a note will play when we hit A0. And we can extend it up so that a note is played on E1 as well. So this will just take this sample and pitch it down to A0, and it'll pitch it up to play on E1. And then if we take C2, we can do the same. We can bring it up to C2, and we can bring it all the way down to C2. And then we just want to extend it out to A1, and we can extend it right the way up to E2. So we've got C2 being pitched to play across these notes, and we've got our C1 being pitched to play across these notes. So if I actually audition this now in the keyboard, that's C2 now, and then C1. So if we just copy across our bass pattern using Alt and click, we can actually solo this and hit play. So that's our original bass with all the effects on it. So if we just bring across the same effects, we can just close all this down. And if we just hit the Show Hide Chain List, and then we go in and we can drop in a compressor, extend that out, hit Sidechain, select our drums, and kick 2 is our main drum, so we can bring that down. Turn the ratio up and the knee up. And then if we just do the same, what have we got else here? Got our Redux control. Bring our bit reduction down to 11. And add a bit of downsampling. And then finally we can just drop in a auto filter at the end. So you can hear there, as we created that bass, it's just a bit sharper on the actual note hits, but they're both doing pretty much the same thing there. Okay, so that's how to bring your bass in using the simpler device. Okay, so in the next tutorial, we're going to have a look at bringing in a synth pattern, and we're going to be programming that in using the Sylenth. And if you don't have a copy of Sylenth, again, there will be a simpler tutorial right after that showing you how to import those samples.